Yo, what's up, guys? Exciting day here, UFC 249. I'm Alex Baker, aka Osmo, and I'm going to be building some lineups with you guys and showing you how to use the tools on my site, osmo.com, to help you with your DFS process. So, I just released this new tool for the biggest prize pools of all time that we're seeing in this kind of pandemic, and it's the Top Fighters tool. So, it has a lot of really useful information on here. It has um, the Vegas odds for winning by KO, my projected ownership for each fighter, the pace. This is a stat that I developed to estimate how many fantasy points are going to be scored per minute in each fight. The highest paced fights are going to have the highest chance of being in the winning lineup. The top 6%. You got 6 fighters in the UFC DFS contests, and if you pick the 6 that have the highest scores, you're going to win. One way you can estimate that chance is by multiplying my projections for top 6% together. And also, I give the chance that each player will score more than 100 fantasy points. So, really basic UFC stuff. We want to target certain fights because if you get an early knockout, that's going to be really beneficial for your lineup. If you don't have a guy with a first round KO, you're probably not going to win. And certain fights might be slow paced and not a high chance of a KO, and those are a lot less likely to appear in the winning lineup. Now, the site's priced mostly based on the chance that each fighter will win their fight. So the way you're going to get an edge over the competition is by targeting the right fights, of course predicting the winners of those fights, and by outsmarting the field using projected ownership. So there are 2 fights that are 5 rounds today. These are definitely going to be the highest likelihoods to appear in the winning lineup. The top fight, Tony Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje, almost an 80% chance of the winner being in the optimal lineup. Now, the Henry Cejudo versus Dominic Cruz, that's about 70%. So the odds are very good that you're going to need the winner from both of these fights in your lineup to succeed in these tournaments. And with so much of the money going to first, 200K out of 1 million on DraftKings, 100K out of 300K on FanDuel, you want to take a risky strategy that maximizes your chances of getting first. Now, duplication is going to be a big issue tonight with this many entries on DraftKings with 58K. I did the math. There are about 29,000 possible lineups with 11 fights without picking 2 players from the same fight. And that means that the most popular lineups, which are also going to be the strongest lineups, you might be tying with 100 people. And if you divide all that prize money out 100 ways, you're going to be looking at a few thousand bucks instead of 200,000. So I am going to make lineups that have a little bit of a more long shot chance to win tonight, but that I feel are going to have less entries into the tournaments. All right, so I'm going to start building some lineups here. I got my DraftKings tool pulled up. So the chalk lineup construction, I'd say, is picking one of the fighters from each of these first 2 fights. That these are definitely the best fights of the evening. And one guy that I really love tonight is Tony Ferguson. He, based on the betting odds, 64% chance to win. Now, I'm projecting Justin to be 45% owned. So, Tony Ferguson winning this fight is going to give you a much better chance of cashing if you have him, because you're going to be jumping over that 45% of the player pool, about 25% cash. On the converse, Ferguson has 50% ownership, but the winning chance of Justin is 35%. So a little bit less leverage over the field with that result, even though Ferguson is higher owned. So Ferguson probably not as good a value play based on the salaries, but he's my preferred play tonight over the two. All right, fight number 2: Cejudo versus Cruz. Cejudo about 2-1 to win. Now this fight is slower paced, and there is a lower chance of a knockout, which makes that not as exciting as the the main car, or sorry, the main event here. But the fact that there's a low chance of a knockout is going to work in your favor, because you want the fight to go 5 rounds, or you want it to be over in the first round. That middle ground is where you might have a good performance that's not good enough to win your tournament. So I have average fight length projected here. Cejudo versus Cruz, 18 minutes. That is 5 minutes longer than the next highest fight. And that's going to really generate a steady stream of fantasy points for the winner, and average a lot higher than the other fights that aren't 5 rounds. Now, one thing I noticed right off the bat here, Cejudo is the favorite, but if you're a casual player, you're going to be looking at these fantasy points per fight. Cruz is one of the highest on the slate at 101. He's got the better record of 22-2. So I'd be surprised if Cruz doesn't carry significant ownership compared to what you might expect when you're picking the winner of this fight. So again, I like going to the favorite here, Henry Cejudo. I mean, this lineup's starting to look pretty chalky, so I want to pick some underdogs here that might have a good chance of pulling the upset and really throwing a lot of people's lineups into the dumps here. So, all right, I'm going to sort this by top 6 percentage, and it looks like Vicente Luque, pretty good chance of being in the winning lineup, but pretty high ownership. I'm going to go down the list here. Cruz, not very high ownership in our projections. So that could be a good. I think he's a good play because he's in the 5-round fight, but I don't want to pick him in this lineup. So I'm going down the list. Yorgan De Castro. All right, so he's up against Greg Hardy. A little bit below average pace, but he's got a 27% chance of winning by knockout and only 12% ownership. As a general rule, about half of knockouts happen in the first round. So I think that you can get really decent leverage by picking Castro here, and his opponent, Greg Hardy, 31% ownership. So I think that Yorgan De Castro, based on my ownership and top 6 percentage, is a nice contrarian play. Because I did go chalky with the first 2 fights, maybe I want to pick 2 underdogs here. So I got in fight 3, Nagano versus Rosenstrike. Rosenstrike is one of the lowest projected owned players. He is 10-0 with 98 fantasy points per fight, so that might draw some attention to him. But he is a big underdog with only a 29% chance to win by Vegas. The Vegas lines are really what drive the ownership for the most part. So he would be a potential target. I'm kind of looking at the bottom of the ownership here. So we got Alexei Oleinik, 11% owned, 15% chance of being in the winning lineup. This one, a little bit higher pace, which I like. A decent chance of a KO compared to the win percentage. So he's going to win more often by KO than by decision. That's a really good sign. So I'm going to put Alexei Oleinik in my lineup. Now, I picked my 2 underdogs. The other thing to differentiate your lineup is leaving money on the table. So I could just put Nagano and one of the other big favorites in my lineup. But if I spend all that salary, I think that I'm going to be tying with a lot more people than if I don't. People in general in DFS, they want to make a really strong lineup, the strongest lineup possible. So it's going to be hard for them to leave significant amounts of money on the table. But because the risk reward is so high in this tournament, that's going to be my go-to strategy. All right. So I'm looking at my list here. Donald Cerrone, kind of a crowd favorite. He's kind of towards the middle of my list in top 6 percentage. Let me see. Anthony Pettis, about 30% chance of being a top 6 fighter, and because he's got the lower fantasy points per fight, and not I don't think he's as popular as Donald Cerrone. I think that I would go with Pettis. And then I got 9,700 left. So I'm going to be looking to the 8.6 or below range to pick my best option. And that looks like it would be Bryce Mitchell. So Bryce Mitchell is in a very high-paced matchup versus Charles Rosa. And yeah, I think this lineup, although because I'm making this video, like you probably don't want to enter exactly this lineup, but hopefully this gives you a good idea of how I would build here. All right, and then I got FanDuel. On FanDuel, I have a little bit of a different setup here because you do have this MVP spot. It doesn't cost extra money. You get 1.5 times the points. So basically you need the highest scoring fighter in the MVP slot. Now, because some of these fights are 5 rounds, that gives you more outs. It can either go 5 rounds or have a knockout. Either one gives you a great chance of having the highest scoring player. So the top 4 odds are all these fighters in the 5-round fights. So I'm going to be looking to them. Now, it looks like you can get a lot of leverage by going to Dominic Cruz here, based on the Vegas odds. Not that great a chance to win, only 34%. But I have him as 8% to be the top scoring fighter of the slate. So I like picking Dominic Cruz here as my MVP. Now he's only $12. People are probably going to be biased towards picking a more expensive fighter as their MVP, but the odds are really good that it's going to come from one of these 2 fights. So if I add these up, 16%, 30%, 45%, about a little bit less than half of the time it's going to be from fights, the last 2 fights. All right. Now I'm going to be looking for. I went a little bit contrarian at MVP. So I'm going to look for one more underdog play. It looks like, let's see, Nico Price. Now, one thing you have to understand about fantasy is a lot of lineups are generated by optimizers. And if you pick a player like Nico Price, who only has a 24% chance to win tonight, that is not going to pop up very much in these optimized lineups. Now, the lineup Cruncher I use is Fantasy Cruncher, of course, and there are settings you can use to get these guys. The one I like the most is randomness, and that will kind of change the projection for each lineup it generates. They'll get you more of these lower projected guys that have big upside if they do pull up off the upset. I think you can leave a lot of money on the table here. Just based on my lineup so far. So I'm gonna I'll go for one of the title fights here, Gaethje or Ferguson. It looks like neither are really priced very high, so I mean this is kind of adding up for my strategy of leaving money on the table. All right, and then I think one thing I have for FanDuel, I give you the odds that each player will be the second through sixth highest scorer on the slate. Um, and that takes away the odds of it being the top scorer, because if they were the top scorer, you would not want them in the utility spot. So I'm comparing this utility ownership percentage to the chances of being in the top six. All right, so Francis Ngannou, a little bit high priced, so I think that people who are going to spend their money are probably going to land on him. So maybe I'll try to build a lineup that has a little bit more money on the table, and I'll go with Anthony Pettis. Now, Anthony Pettis has a 37% chance of winning tonight, but when he does win, he has a great chance of being in the winning lineup here. All right, so now I want to leave like $10 on the table, and that'll kind of guarantee that I don't want to be splitting this with too many people. So I will go with Bryce Mitchell. Bryce Mitchell is in a fast-paced fight. He is a favorite. He is going to win by decision more often, but I'm hoping that you have a 25% chance of him getting a knockout, and then there's a good chance that if it goes to decision, he'll rack up enough points with that 7.5 pace, which is above average. All right, and then I kind of want to limit it to $17 or lower. They'll minimize the number of duplicated lineups. Although one thing you have to be aware of is that there are 40K lineups on FanDuel, but there are more combinations because of this MVP spot. So you don't have to try quite as hard as on DraftKings to make a unique lineup. So maybe I will go with Ngannou. I think that he's one of the top guys on my projections to be a top scorer. And I think this lineup is unique enough to stand out and maybe take that 100K via sole win. So, all right, guys, let me know if you have any questions in the chat. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. Good luck tonight. And hope to talk some more MMA later this week, and the next UFC match should be a good one. So, all right, guys, see you next time.